We all know Japan for neon cities and sushi, but its islands shelter rain-soaked primeval forests, floating torii, and dunes that feel borrowed from another continent. Yakushima's ancient cedars may be several thousand years old, and Lake Mashu can vanish into mirrorless fog sailors, once called divine. In this video, I'll show you Japan's most unforgettable places, from cliff shrines to secret islands where sea turtles shape the tides. Stay with me and watch how waterfalls, valleys, dunes, and coral reefs connect into one surprising journey. Yakushima's Jomonsugi cedar is one of the oldest living trees on Earth, its trunk whispering stories from more than 7,000 years ago. Do you know, Yakushima receives up to 10 meters of rain each year, feeding a temperate rainforest that is nearly unparalleled in the world. Moss carpets every boulder and branch in Shiratani Unsuikyo, turning the island into an otherworldly green realm that inspired artists and scientists. Ancient Yakusugi cedars twist into cathedral-sized forms, and some trunks hollow into rooms you could stand inside. Relics of climates survived across millennia. Trails run from black sand beaches where loggerhead turtles nest, up through fern-filled ravines, to cloud-shrouded summits like Miyanura Dake. Endemic creatures, the diminutive Yakushima macaque and the shy Yaku deer, move through understory and stream as if part of the forest's own memory. Rain funnels into crystalline rivers that carved terraces and sustained human settlements, while isolation produced plant species found nowhere else on Earth. Researchers still uncover new mosses and ferns, and UNESCO recognition only hints at the fragile timelines held within every knot of wood. Hikers who reach the ridgelines watch fog change to sunlight within minutes, a meteorological spectacle driven by warm ocean currents nearby. That same sea links Yakushima to subtropical reefs and neighboring islands, reminding us mountain forests and coral realms are parts of one living network. Walking from cedar groves toward the coast, you trace the island's story, from ancient wood to modern conservation, and sense a thread connecting Yakushima to Kyushu's volcanic spine. Protecting this compact, rain-drenched island becomes a broader pledge. Preserve one rare landscape, and you help sustain the ecological weave that binds southern Japan. Local communities practice quiet stewardship, balancing visitors with strict trail limits and cedar protections. Kouri Island's bridge and crystalline shallows reveal a rare intertidal heart rock that frames the sea like a living locket. Do you know Kouri Island hosts one of Japan's few naturally heart-shaped coastal formations, exposed only at certain tides? Drive across Kouri Ohashi, and the ocean shifts from deep navy to impossible turquoise, a color that painters chase but rarely capture. Locals say the bridge is more than a road. It's a pause between Maine, Okinawa, and a sliver of island time, where traditions linger. At the island's tip, Heart Rock sits within knee-deep water, its alcoves carved by currents and coral that survived ancient reefs. Beneath the surface, fields of white coral sand and living foraminifera scatter light, so the waves seem to glow from within. This luminescent seafloor attracts not just tourists, but migrating sea turtles that feed along the shallow grassbeds at dusk. Fishermen launch small boats from sandy coves, trading fresh bonito and shellfish that reflect centuries of Ryukyu Island culture. Kouri's tiny villages cluster behind the beaches, where wooden houses display weathered tiles and handmade nets hung to dry. Walk the narrow lanes and elders will point out ruins of old Ryukyu walls that whisper how Kouri connected to trade routes long before the bridge. For photographers, sunrise over Kouri Bridge frames silhouettes of distant islands, and at low tide, the Heart Rock becomes an altar to light. Kouri Ocean Tower rises nearby, offering panoramas where the island's pattern of reefs, sandbanks, and currents reads like a living map. From there, it's a short hop to neighboring Nakijin and its imposing castle ruins, reminding visitors that this small isle is stitched into Okinawa's larger history. Spend an afternoon snorkeling, and you might follow a halcyon school of fish into a corridor of corals that connects Kouri's inner lagoons to the open sea. By evening, fishermen light lanterns, and the island hums softly, a place where Jolajisi, tide, and human life compose a fragile, luminous harmony. Kouri Island is compact, but full of secrets, each tide revealing another layer of its coastal heartbeat. Stay a little longer, and you'll see how this tiny island draws threads that lead to other Okinawan wonders, begging you to keep exploring. The Kerama Islands are famous for Kerama blue, a rare oceanic clarity where visibility can exceed 30 meters and sunlight scatters into impossibly vivid turquoise. Do you know the Kerama Islands shelter, one of the densest sea turtle nesting grounds in Japan, where green and loggerhead turtles return year after year? Beneath that glassy surface, coral gardens unfurl in layered terraces, hosting thousands of fish species that weave like living tapestries. Local divers swear the reefs around Zamami and Tokashiki feel like stepping into an aquarium designed by the ocean itself. Seasonal currents bring migrating manta rays and billfish close to shore, linking the islands to the deeper pelagic highways of the East China Sea. On calm mornings, pods of dolphins arc between islands, their pathways tracing invisible corridors that fishermen and researchers alike now map. Conservation efforts here are quietly revolutionary, blending traditional fishing practices with scientific coral restoration to revive bleached sections faster than elsewhere. Community-led mooring buoys and strict dive limits have reduced anchor damage and give fragile corals time to heal. And as we move from these sheltered channels toward Okinawa's main island, the stories of conservation and culture continue, intertwined and unfolding. Here, traditional boat builders still read swell and wind as ancestors taught, shaping vessels that slip silently over reefs. Their knowledge is being recorded and passed to younger generations who patrol for illegal fishing and monitor coral health. The Kerama Islands may seem small on a map, but their ecological influence radiates far beyond their shores, a reminder that tiny places can protect entire seas. What happens in Kerama matters to the migratory routes and reef resilience across the wider Ryukyu chain. Mount Daisen slopes cradle a rare temperate montane mosaic where beech woods meet volcanic ridgelines. Do you know, Mount Daisen was once a sacred training ground for Yamabushi monks, its rituals shaping village calendars? Spring's huge snowmelt to autumn's vivid crimson, the mountain stages seasonal shifts uncommon in lowland Japan. Its serrated summit is the tallest in the Chugoku region and a living record of past eruptions. Trails thread through mossed cedar groves and pockets of subalpine plants, found rarely in western Honshu. Old pilgrimage paths lead to Daisen-ji, a temple that once drew emperors and ascetics seeking clarity and herbs. Winter sculpts the mountain into a white cathedral, preserving species adapted to long snow seasons. Summer fills the valleys with ferns and wildflowers that sustain rare migratory birds. Travelers historically descended from these peaks toward Izumo's ancient shrines, linking Daisen to Japan's oldest sacred sites. Today, the mountain is both a refuge for fragile ecosystems and a living cultural landscape. Exploring Mount Daisen means reading volcanic, botanical, and spiritual layers stacked on a single soaring peak. Hikers find quiet shrines wedged between ancient trees and modern trail signs, traces of worship and stewardship. From Daisen, the path unfolds eastward toward coastal plains and the myth-haunted sanctuaries of Izumo, inviting further exploration. Iya Valley is one of the rare places where vine bridges, plunging gorges, and terraced farms combine into a landscape largely untouched by modern grids. Do you know Iya Valley still preserves kazurabashi bridges, woven from wisteria vines, that villagers rebuilt each generation to cross the roaring rivers below? Mists rise from the gorge at dawn, wrapping cedar forests and remote farmhouses in soft veils that seem to slow time itself. Hiking paths lead from stone settlements to viewpoints where you can see tiny tea terraces clinging to cliffs and the distant line of the Yoshino mountain range. In spring, cherry blossoms and wild primroses spill color across slopes, while autumn paints the valley in lacquered reds and golds that mirror the river below. Local whispers tell of hidden onsen tucked in ravines, simple hot pools used for centuries by farmers and travelers who needed warmth more than luxury. The Iya Valley community has guarded its traditions, from mountain festivals to soba-making rituals, preserving flavors and crafts passed down through stubborn hands. Crossing from Iya toward Oboke, the landscape shifts into sculpted river canyons, where whitewater boats carve narrow passages and reveal monolithic cliffs. This corridor between valleys became a route for traders and monks, each footstep etching stories into mossy stones and teaching new travelers how to read the land. You might find a farmhouse where paper lanterns still glow by evening, and the family will offer you miso soup steeped with mountain herbs and warm conversation. From Iya's secluded valleys, narrow roads climb to observation points that frame distant sea glimpses, reminding visitors how close these mountains stand to the Seto Inland Sea. At this meeting of river, mountain, and sea, Iya Valley teaches a quieter pace, and our next stop will follow the waterways linking these worlds. Seto Inland Sea shelters more than 3,000 islands, forming one of the world's densest and most placid archipelagos. Do you know the Seto Inland Sea is home to islands where seaweed farms, centuries-old salt pans, and contemporary art installations share the same shoreline? From the shining metal spans of the Shimanami Kaido to the minimalist museums on Naoshima, each island reads like a different chapter of maritime life and human creativity. Fishermen still read the tides here like an open book, relying on microclimates that yield bittersweet citrus groves and unusually clear summer waters full of life. The sea's gentle currents carved calm channels used since ancient times to ferry salt, pottery, and ideas between Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. Follow the ferries, and you'll discover Onomichi's temple slopes, Tashima's limestone coves, and hidden bays where bioluminescent plankton sometimes set the night aglow. Salt farmers along the shore still evaporate seawater in shallow pans, producing a coarse, mineral-rich salt that chefs prize for its depth of flavor. Those same tidal flats are nurseries for shellfish and fish, drawing migratory birds and supporting island communities whose livelihoods depend on seasonal rhythms. Here, art is stitched into the landscape rather than imposed upon it. Naoshima's concrete pavilions rise like thoughtful exclamation points, while Tashima's installations breathe with the wind and tide. Cyclists on the Shimanami Kaido pedal across bridges with the sea opening beneath them, watching fishing boats carve silver arcs and small islands drift by like punctuation. The archipelago connects ancient pilgrimage routes and modern galleries, so a morning begun with temple bells can end at a waterfront studio as dusk softens the horizon. What ties these places together is the sea itself. Calm, changeable, and generous, shaping diets, crafts, and stories for centuries in ways most visitors never expect. Every island keeps a quiet secret. A family-run kiln, a single restaurant famed for sea salt, or a shoreline path leading to an abandoned lighthouse that remembers the tides. Stay long enough, and the Seto becomes less a destination and more a slow conversation with the sea, one that prepares you to follow its tide toward the rugged shores beyond. Lake Mashu in eastern Hokkaido is one of the clearest lakes on Earth, with visibility sometimes exceeding 40 meters, a clarity found in only a handful of freshwater lakes worldwide. Do you know Lake Mashu is perched in a near-perfect volcanic caldera and was considered sacred by the Ainu, who believed its mirror-like surface hid spirits beneath? The lake's rim rises steep and forested, plunging almost vertically to a deep cobalt basin that rarely disturbs its immaculate reflection. On quiet mornings, the surface becomes an unbroken sheet of glass, revealing turquoise and indigo shades that change with the angle of light. Scientists attribute Mashu's clarity to minimal inflow, volcanic filtration through porous rock, and the absence of large rivers carrying sediment into the basin. Those same qualities make the water chemically unique, with low nutrient levels that limit algae and preserve transparency like an underwater cathedral. Local guides tell stories of centuries-old fogs that roll down from the caldera rim, swallowing the lake and leaving only the top of a pine or a lone crag visible. These shifting curtains of cloud gave rise to legends and taboos, and even today, visitors approach its edge with a hush, aware of something older than any map. From the main observatory, you can see the entire round of the caldera, a near-perfect circle carved by cataclysmic eruptions tens of thousands of years ago. That violent past is written in the surrounding volcanic peaks and links Mashu to the larger tapestry of Kegon Mashu National Park, where steaming vents and thermal lakes continue the story. As we leave Mashu's rim, the landscape unravels toward Lake Kusharo, where hot springs and marshes offer a softer, warmer contrast to Mashu's cold clarity. In this way, one lake hands the tale to the next, a chain of volcanic moods that traces Hokkaido's restless, geological heart. Nachi Waterfall in Japan plunges 133 meters in a single unbroken fall, standing beside an ancient shrine in a combination almost unique on Earth. Do you know Nachi Waterfall and the adjacent Kumano Nachi Taisha have been linked to mountain worship and pilgrimage routes for over 1,000 years? Mists from the drop feed mossy rocks and cedar groves, turning the gorge into a living cathedral of emerald and stone. Pilgrims historically climbed the steep steps from Segantoji Temple, their prayers swallowed by the thunderous roar that still dominates the valley. Stone lanterns and red-lacquered bridges frame the view, creating compositions that Japanese artists have painted for centuries. In autumn, the trees flare crimson and gold, and in spring the falls are flanked by pale cherry blossoms that soften the scene. Local legends tell of a dragon spirit dwelling in the pool below, its presence honored during the Nachi no Fire Festival, when torches blaze on the hillside. That festival links the waterfall to the human rhythm of seasons, plumbing a deep seam of ritual that stretches across the Kii Peninsula. The constant elemental plunge that rewrites perception of distance and silence. Conservationists now protect the watershed, balancing visitor access with reverence for the shrine and delicate ecosystems downstream. Local boatmen, once guiding ritual offerings, now ferry curious travelers who arrive hoping to feel the spray on their faces. From the falls, you can continue along coastal roads toward the craggy shores of Nachi Bay, where the mountain's waters meet the Pacific. This geographic continuity, from summit to sea, is what makes Nachi more than a single spectacle. It is the hinge of a living landscape. In the next segment, we will trace the pilgrim's route deeper into Kumano, following the same footsteps that have linked villages, shrines, and waterfalls for generations. You will meet the caretakers, hear the chants, and discover the small hidden pools that hold stories older than maps. By the time we leave Nachi, the roar will have settled into memory, and the path ahead will already be calling. Prepare to follow that call into the forested spine of the Kii Mountains, where the next secret waits. The Tottori sand dunes stretch along the Sea of Japan for 16 kilometers, an otherworldly coastal desert. Wind-sculpted ridges and secret flat plains hide ancient marine fossils and migrating shorebird sanctuaries. Shepherds once grazed goats here, shaping vegetation that traps sand and preserves rare dune flora. At dawn, the dunes release a dry, whispering scent that early samurai-era travelers described in journals. Beneath the shifting sand lie fossilized whale bones from epochs when the coastline lay further inland. Archaeologists have unearthed pottery shards nearby, suggesting human encounters with this landscape dating back thousands of years. The dunes are home to the Sand Museum, where artists carve ephemeral landscapes into towering walls of compacted sand. Every winter, sculptors from around the globe transform sand into intricate scenes that melt back into the wind by spring. Visitors can ride camels imported decades ago, a surreal reminder of how far this Japanese coast feels from the rest of the archipelago. Paragliders lift above the dunes at sunset, skimming thermal currents that rise from the warm sand into cobalt skies. Conservationists monitor the delicate balance between tourism and dune health, replanting grasses and rerouting paths to prevent erosion. Community festivals celebrate sand, sisi, and skirai, teaching children to read the land's subtle shifts, like weather maps. Follow the shoreline west, and the landscape folds into the cedar forests of Mount Daisen, linking sand to sacred mountain. That transition, from wind-blown barrens to mossy shrines, reveals why Tottori's coastline is both geologist's textbook and pilgrim's poem. In the next segment, we'll trace the old pilgrim routes up Daisen, where volcanic rocks whisper different ancient secrets. We'll see how water that once fed these dunes now gathers in streams that carve the mountain's valleys. Photographers chase the rare blue hour reflections along tidal flats, where ripples double the sky's shifting colors. Night brings luminous moths and the distant sound of fisher boats, their lanterns nodding like slow constellations. Scientists study the dunes as living laboratories for climate change, measuring how sea level and wind patterns reshape shorelines. Each grain of sand here is a tiny archive, tracing the interplay of ocean, mountain, and human hands across centuries. Ishigaki Island shelters one of the planet's rarest coral gardens. Do you know Kabira Bay? On Ishigaki hosts luminous white coral sands and turquoise currents that conceal ancient black coral groves. Beneath those waters, divers find manta rays that swirl like slow comets at a site locals call Manta Scramble. Snorkelers drift over kaleidoscopic reefs where butterfly fish and hidden sea cucumbers craft a living mosaic of color. On shore, the island's limestone cliffs drip with orchids and endemic ferns found nowhere else in Japan. Farmers still plant salt-tolerant sugarcane along terraced fields that lead your eye toward Iriomote's mangrove silhouettes. A short ferry ride connects Ishigaki to Takatomi, where Okinawan red-tiled houses and water buffalo carts seem suspended in time. From Takatomi, the story moves back to Iriomote's labyrinthine rivers, where crocodile-like estuaries harbor rare mudflat crabs. At dusk, Ishigaki's western shore becomes a cathedral of light as bioluminescent plankton trace the boat's wake. Night brings constellations so clear you can spot the Milky Way spilling over Yaeyama's scattered islets. Local chefs turn island mackerel and purple sweet potato into dishes that taste like place and history folded together. Traditional festivals still echo Ryukyuan chants that bind coral, sea, and village into one enduring rhythm. Hikers who climb Mount Nosoko find wind-sculpted grasses and sweeping views that stitch the sea and sky into a single map. Each viewpoint points toward another island, inviting travelers to hop from reef to river, to village, and back again. Ishigaki is not just an escape. It is a living atlas of micro-ecosystems where each tide redraws the coastline's hidden lines. Stay with us, and we'll trace the currents that connect Kabira Bay to the broader Yaeyama archipelago and its secret worlds. We'll meet the divers who shepherd coral nurseries and the elders who remember when ships brought spices to these shores. You'll learn how climate shifts are reshaping currents and which community projects fight to keep reefs alive for future generations. The island's limestone caves whisper fossil records of seas that once rose and fell in slow geological breath. And as dawn breaks again over Ishigaki's east, the island reveals another secret, a pocket of migratory birds that stop briefly to refuel. Kegon Falls plunges about 97 meters from the rim of Nikko's caldera, creating one of the planet's few true curtain waterfalls that pour out of a lake-fed cliff. Do you know that the water spilling over Kegon Falls originates in Lake Chuzenji, which formed when Mount Daisen's eruption dammed a valley more than 20,000 years ago? From the observation platforms, you can feel the sheer scale as mist rises like a living veil. And on autumn days, the cascade is framed by fiery maple leaves. In winter, the torrent sculpts itself into frozen columns, turning the drop into a ghostly skyline that photographers and climbers seek out. Local lore adds another layer. Samurai tales and poets have long celebrated Kegon as both a place of beauty and a passage between the earthly and the spiritual. That spiritual thread links the falls to Nikko's UNESCO shrines, where the same volcanic forces and sacred springs shape the temple's placement and rituals. A short ride from the base of the falls, Lake Chuzenji offers a placid counterpoint. Its mirror-like surface feeds the dramatic drop and reflects the seasons that surround it. Boat tours and lakeside trails let you trace the journey of water from mountain to cliff, turning geology into a living story you can walk. In the softer light of morning, the falls sings differently, and photographers wait for that precisely split second when sunlight ignites the mist into a pale rainbow. At dusk, lantern-lit pathways around nearby temples shift the mood, leading from the wild roar of water to the quiet stone steps of shrines. Kegon is a study in contrasts. Raw volcanic power sculpted the falls, yet centuries of human reverence have made this place contemplative and accessible. Walk the trails, and you move from geological spectacle to intimate encounters. An old bridge, a carved shrine, a solitary bench where you can hear nothing but the waterfall's pulse. As the seasons turn, you sense the long dialogue between land, water, and people that defines so much of Nikko's landscape. From Kegon, it is natural to continue uphill toward the cedar-lined approaches of Toshogu Shrine, where stone and wood celebrate the same forces that shape the falls. Seasonal festivals, local tea houses, and small museums nearby preserve memories of how villages adapted to the mountain's moods. Leaving Kegon, you carry both the roar of the falls and the quiet rituals that grew around it, a natural gateway to the broader mysteries of Nikko. Kiso Valley harbors ancient Kisohinoki cedar groves, whose timber has built imperial shrines and samurai castles for over 1,000 years, a continuity rare anywhere in the world. Do you know Kiso Valley's Nakasendo corridor still connects living Edo period post towns like Magome and Tsumago, where footsteps on worn flagstones echo centuries of travelers? Walk the carved trail between Magome and Tsumago, and you pass tea houses, preserved inns, and mossy stone waymarkers that refuse modern intrusion. From Tsumago, the path threads into cedar tunnels that smell of resin and history, and each bend unveils a new detailed tale of rural Japan, frozen in time. Further north, Narajuku stretches along the Kiso River, with long wooden shop fronts and lacquered signboards, still advertising craftsmen's trades from the Edo era. Kiso Fukushima, the valley's bustling hub, mixes markets of local soba and cypress wares, with steep trails climbing toward mountain shrines. Skilled woodworkers in these towns coax bowls and temple pillars from the same Kisohinoki species, revered for its scent, grain, and resistance to rot. Seasonal festivals animate narrow streets with lanterns and portable shrines, linking communal memory to the valley's forests and rivers. Hot springs tucked into mountain folds soothe hikers after the Nakasendo pilgrimage, and ryokan dinners showcase river fish and wild mountain vegetables. The valley's preservation rules are strict, so even electricity poles bow to aesthetics, and modern neon rarely disturbs the dusk. Local guides will point out subtle markers carved by ancient road crews and tell stories of messenger horses that once thundered here. Each village hands its crafts and songs to the next, so a lacquered bowl bought in Narai feels like it belongs in Sumago's tea house. Hiking from post town to post town reveals how landscape shaped culture. Rivers directing trade, cedars supplying temples, mountains protecting traditions. Follow the Nakasendo as it leaves Kiso Valley, and you are led toward Mount Ontake's steaming ridges and sacred trails that deepen the valley's spiritual map. Kiso Valley is not just scenery. It's a living archive where every gate, gutter, and grain of wood keeps a secret waiting to be read. Stay long enough, and the valley teaches you to see how one preserved place naturally carries you to the next, like beads on an ancient traveler's cord. In the end, Kiso Valley's quiet continuity becomes a chain of surprises, hand-hewn bridges, secret shrines, and small museums that alter everything you thought you knew about Japan. And once you taste this slow, layered history, you'll understand why travelers linger and why each village feels like an invitation to keep walking. From the mirrored lakes beneath Mount Fuji to the lantern-lit alleys of Kyoto, Japan folds centuries and innovation into landscapes that seem to breathe history and modernity in one exhale. As you trace the cedar-lined path from Nikko's ornate shrines through the bamboo groves of Arashiyama to the avant-garde shores of Naoshima, each place hands you a new way to read this island nation's story. Even the smallest isles, from the subtropical Ogasawara to the stone-studded coasts of the Noto Peninsula, carry their own myths, cuisines, and seasons written into rock and tide. And when you stand on a quiet ridge at dawn, watching cranes wheel, or in a neon street at midnight, where robots and ramen share the same corner, you find that Japan is less a destination than a conversation between past and future. Carry these images back with you. The lacquered roofs silvered with rain, the laughter over a late-night bowl of noodles, the silent, deliberate bow that contains generations. And return because Japan, like any great story, reveals new chapters each time you read it. This journey out ends for now, but the map remains open. Bookmarks in temples, stamps on a traveler's ledger, seeds planted in memory. Go with a mind ready to notice and a heart willing to be changed.